In this tutorial, we'll be covering how to 3D model a wooden crate and also UV unwrap that wooden crate, prepared for game development in Unreal Engine. So the first step that we want to do is we want to put in a basic cube. That will be the starting point of our mesh. So in the top left, click on Poly Modeling and then click on the cube shape. What it'll do is put this cube here, and then we can change the values here. If for whatever reason you've clicked off of it, just click on it again and it should come up with this. If that doesn't show up, you can go to the right here, and on this tab called Channel Box / Layer Editor, we can edit it through here. So if you go to Polycube 1 or whatever the shape is called, and then it'll drop down with this exact same set of values that we can change. So I'm going to change these to 100, 100 and 100 on width, height and depth. The reason for this is because Maya works in centimeters and so does Unreal Engine. And a wooden crate, in my personal opinion, goes to around waist height, which would be around about 100 centimeters. So from this, we've got a nicely scaled 3D mesh that we won't need to scale once it goes into Unreal Engine or any engine that you're working with. So from this, we can start editing the shape to make it look how we need. So with this, we're going to have the inset portion that the diagonal planks go into on a traditional wooden crate. So what we need to do is drag select. First of all, we need to go to face selection. So what we need to do is on the right, go to the modeling toolkit, and then you can see these selection options at the top. So this is object selection, which will allow us just to select the whole shape. We've got vertex selection, which allows us to select each corner. We've got edge selection, which allows us to select an edge, and then face selection, which allows us to do a full face. This one is a UV shell selector, which we don't need to worry about at this stage. So we want the face selection, and we want to left click hold and drag across this whole shape. What you should see is all the faces then turn orange. If they're not, then make sure that you're getting all of them to be orange. From this, we then want to use the extrusion tool. So if we click on this, the shape should go with the orange selection, but should go all black. From this then, we want to do keep faces together, and this will be by default bit on. We want to turn that to off. What this does is separates the selection, because it puts it all into one group and tries to do all these settings to the exact same shape. So for instance, if I improve the thickness, it improves it all as one shape. Whereas if I turn this off, it does it individually for each face. But we're not going to worry about thickness for this one. We want to do offset. So it's up to you what number it is. I like to go with 15. It's a nice round number, and it allows us to work with the extrusion inwards once we get to that stage. So make sure it's a nice round number or something that you're comfortable with, and then click extrude again. We need to click it again, otherwise it will keep the offset with it and it'll sort of move with that. So we want to make a fresh extrude, and then when we do that, it won't take that offset information as well. So from this, I like to do -10. Again, a nice round number. What you'll see is if you go more than that 15 number that we did on the inset that we put in, you'll see this black area. This is something that we don't want to see in games development. This black area, once you put it into Engine, will become invisible. So you'll be able to see through the mesh, which is not something that you want. So make sure it's less than the inset number. So because I did that as 15, I'm going to do this as 10, and then it's a nice round number again. So we've got the basic shape here. We want to then add the diagonal struts that add to the stability of the box. So what we want to do here is add a new fresh cube. So on the top left, click on the cube, and we want to scale this to a sensible number. So in my scale, I'm going to put this to 10, 10 and 10. And then from this, I'm going to scale this up. So I'm pressing R for scale, and then scale it on the red axis or the blue one. If you've put it to the blue axis, we just want it to stretch the entire length of this. Then sort of move it into place to see if it looks alright, and then press E and hold J. What J does is allow snapping. So without this, you'll have to sort of guess the right angle and it might not be quite right. Whereas if we hold J, it'll snap and then we can get that perfect 45-degree angle to have it diagonally. And then if we scale that to make sure that it covers the entire area, you'll be able to see that by this green outline on the shape. You want to make sure that that becomes invisible. That means that it's inside of the shape and you won't be able to see it. What we then want to do is move it back out and we want to delete the faces that are now invisible. So this top and the bottom face of the cube and then the innermost face. We want to delete that and that'll allow us to optimize this shape to the best of our ability. Okay, so let's move that back into place and then that looks like as we should. If we put on the green space ambient occlusion, you can see a nice shadow and it sort of makes it pop a bit more. With this, we can start to put it around, but because we're UV unwrapping the shape, and this is going to be identical to the rest of them, it's good to UV unwrap this first. So we're going to UV unwrap this shape, and then we're going to copy and paste this across, and it'll keep that same UV. So if we drag select with object selection, both of these objects, and then at the top go to UV, and then UV editor. What we've got here then is the very basic UV that we start off with, which is from the basic box, but it doesn't take all the editing that we've done. So what we need to do is, I like to start from a fresh slate, which is from create on the UV editor, and then any of these is fine, but I like to go camera based. It might look a mess here, but it'll start to make sense. So what we then need to do is start cutting sections so that it can separate out. So I'm going to go to the edge selection on this UV editor, and I can select this in 3D. It's a bit easier for me to select it in 3D than this, because it's a bit of a mess and I'm not sure exactly where the edges are. So if I do it in 3D, I know exactly what I'm selecting. So I'm going to click on the edges and I'm going to hold shift, and that allows me to select multiple things. And then on the UV editor, I'm going to go to the cut drop down. So if you scroll down a little bit, you should see cut and sew, and I'm going to select cut. What this does then is you can see this white outline. A white outline means that it's cut and you can separate that out. So if I go to this icon here, which is a shell selection, which is, it selects all the faces that are part of one cut sort of shell, is what it's called. I can then separate that out and I can see that that's now separated. What I want to do is cut the rest of those edges. I'm going to do that bit by bit. So all of these are now cut. Each of the sides of this cube is now cut. So what I can do is do this shell selection. I'll move the diagonal one out of the way, and I'm going to select all of these. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to unfold these. What this does is allows it to be flattened, because if we click on this checkerboard, we can preview what the texture would look like. So because of this, it's slightly warped and it's not exactly what we're looking for. It's got a bit of a diagonal angle to it and things seem to be stretched a little bit. So if I unfold this, I take off that checkerboard, we can see this a bit more. And then it looks like this, and then we can drop down the layout, arrange and layout menu and do layout, and it lays them out. What we then want to do is rotate these to where they're near enough straight. We don't need to worry about getting them perfect at this point. Just get them so they're near enough straight. And then what we can do is go back up to the unfold and straighten UVs. So this will straighten them out, and then I'll unfold again and straighten and then unfold. So for me, my best step is to make sure it's looking as good as it can. So in this case, straighten UV seems to make it look the neatest, but sometimes the unfold would be the last stage. And then if we lay that out again, then it becomes perfectly snapped into a nice pattern. And I can see here that these cubes are near enough what I need. So this warping here will be because the last step was to straighten. If I unfold that, oh, never mind. But this bit of warping here is negligible and it won't actually matter too much. So from this, we've got this done. So what we then need to do is unfold this one, rotate it, straighten, unfold, straighten, and then that's as good as it's going to get. So then we lay that out and we move that across to the empty space, and then that should be fine. The reason why I'm putting it all into this one box here is because that's what the texture uses. So if you've got a seamless texture, it sort of repeats onto all of these squares. So if you wanted this to be wood and you wanted to do a lot of detail and you've got a repeated seamless texture, you might scale this up and then it'd repeat onto that shape. But in general practice, you would have everything fit onto this one square here. So that's the UVs done. I'm then going to do the final touches of copying this across, and then that should then be the finished mesh. So what we need to do is I could go around and sort of try rotate this in a way that makes sense, but the easiest way we can do that is to edit the pivot point. So currently the pivot point is in the center of this cube. I want it at the 0 point, so the center of this cube. So what we need to do is go to the attribute editor, so select this diagonal mesh here, and then go to the attribute editor on the right, so the second tab down, and go to pcube2. It should match this title here. We'll go to pcube2, and then we drop down pivots, and then we change the world rotate pivot all to 0. So make sure all those numbers are 0. Then what we need to do is we need to go to the modeling toolkit, scroll all the way to the bottom, and change this rotation setting. So make sure you've pressed E to have it into the rotation mode, and change this object to world. What that will do is reset the rotation to not follow the rotation of the object, but follow the rotation of the world. What we can then do is, with the rotation mode still on, we want to hold shift. This will enable the clone mode, which will duplicate. But before we do that, we want to hold J as well, which enables the snapping. So we clone snapping, and I'm going to rotate all of them into place. So I just want one diagonal brace on each side, so all the side ones, and then on the top and bottom as well. So there we are. So I've got the diagonal braces and all of them. If I select all of this again, and I go to the UV editor, I can see that it's still keeping that same UV. So if I select all of these, it selects all of the braces there. So they will share the same UV. If that's not something that you want, you can then do the layout again, and then they'll all get stacked there. But if you are wanting to use the same texture, the reason why that would be fine is because none of these are sort of connected to each other, so it wouldn't look too wrong for it to all have the same texture. This cube here might look a bit strange because you might see the repeated texture on the edges and it might look a bit too obvious, but you can do this same technique on these if you are wanting a bit of extra texture resolution onto these. So that's how you make a wooden crate that has been UV'd.